I remembered.
So I have a question. How did you get, I'm using Atom. How did you get, like I can make a new file just as untitled. How did you make it like web?
Sure. So if you open up the project tree here, you can always just rename it something. Or if you do like a new file and you have this, if you call it something like base or something, you can just do .html. You should be able to type in the name here. And if you're not able to, you can right click it and then rename it or something.
Okay.
In Atom, how do you get like the project manager thing on the side? Because I'm in just like single file.
If you have this like weird stuff over here, you can always exit out of the tabs that you see, like the welcome tab, and then you can, let's see, you should be able to say like open, add it. You can either add a project folder. That might be a good idea. If you're in a Mac or a PC, you can create a new folder on your desktop. In my case, I created this web portfolio folder, and then what you can do is you can go to Atom, File, Add Project Folder, and then find the folder that you want and select it, and then it should show up on the left-hand side. Should have mentioned that before. And also, we just started the recording for everyone watching this as a recording. You missed my entire lecture, but it's okay. This is the important part. Thumbs up for people?
So then how did you get the underneath web portfolio says base HTML, home HTML?
Oh, those are just other ones that I created. I can delete those.
And that's, would you go to file, new file? Is the
Yeah,
way
you can
do
do file, new file, or you can right click web portfolio and hit new file as well.
And then it says untitled. How do you retitle it?
You can right click the file and then hit rename. And then you should see this, and then you can either rename the thing or you can rename the whole thing as .html or .css, whatever you want.
Okay. All right.
If you're saving it for the first time, it'll be prompted for a title.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you also can do Command S or Control S and save it. All good?
Yeah, and then you just press enter to get 1, 2, 3 and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And you said you should, what did you say? You said you should always like cap it off or something?
Yeah, anytime you create a, what this is called a tag, this is an opening tag. So you want the close tag, wrapping anything that you create. Periodically, I'll also copy and paste the code. So I'll just do that right now. Check. And then you should be able to just copy that into whatever you're using. Sound good? Ready to keep going?
Yeah, and then how did you open it on your browser again?
If you go to the file, and so in this case I used home.html, you can just right click open with, and open either Safari or Firefox or Chrome. And if you click Chrome, it'll open up, and you've got Hello World there.
So HTML is kind of like PDF or something. It's compatible with browsers.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Ready to go? All right, everybody, let's do this. So we mentioned that HTML is the basic skeleton of your website. And with HTML, there's tons of different tags that you can use to define what it is that you're going to be doing. So if you're curious as to what are all the different tags, you can go to like the website like w3schools.org, and they're basically an online center where you can learn about all these different HTML tags. We're not going to spend time like going through like what every single tag is, because for our purposes, only a couple of tags matter. And the first one we'll do is a header tag, which is in this case, you can type in H1 and do the opening and closing tag. And let's put our hello world inside of the H1. Say anytime you make a change, save it, open up your browser, refresh, and then you should be able to see the big change in the hello world. And this is true for any sort of the text tag. So maybe you want to create a paragraph of text. So you type in P, make sure it's closed and open and close. You can start to type in your different things of text. So, maybe let's change this to my portfolio.
And real quick, what do you click to do like the autocomplete to add the
I just type in P and enter. It was already like that on Atom, but if not, you can like quickly type in the open and closing tag. I'm gonna while you sort of copy what I'm doing, I'm gonna type in hello, my name is Antonio. Please hire me for your firm and or hedge fund. Classic, right? Blah blah blah. More. It's just to see. Save it, refresh the page, and then you should be able to see the changes in your code. You can always add more things. Maybe you want to add an image underneath, you know, your tag. If you type in IMG and then hit enter, this is the default. If you want to build it from scratch, you can right type IMG space SRC. This is the source. This is what your image is going to be. You know, two quote equals. You always want to wrap it in quotation marks, and then a close tag. You actually don't need. I always say you should always close off your tags, but for images, you actually don't need a closing tag. So you just need that. And if you have an image, you can drag in the file, or say we want to put in our own image. So we're here at Google Images. Click, you know, the bulldog. I'm going to copy the image address. You don't have to do this. This is just for me to show you. Copy that in there. It's a JPEG. We go back to our HTML. Oops, home.html. There's our bulldog next to my portfolio. So it's a cute little sleeping bulldog. Lots of fun stuff. Thumbs up for people that you know you're seeing this. Great. So you know, in just a little bit of time, we were able to put in some text for a title, some paragraph text, and even an image. But you can start to see that it's all left aligned. It's all this ugly like Times New Roman font. It's not really looking like the sleek modern websites that we use today. And what we can start to do is change the style of it. And like I mentioned, you can do that in multiple ways. You can write your own style, or you can use somebody else's style. If we wanted to write our own style, let's open up a new style tag here. So style, and then close style. You can also do this as a separate file, but in our case, it'll be easier to just have all one file. And this basically is going to anything in here is going to be written in CSS, which is a different code syntax. But for the purposes of being simple, you can just call different tags. For example, H1. Any H1, we're going to do a bracket like that. Is the color is going to be red. And this is just a super simple, or you can type in, a hex code, 68492 or whatever. But I'm just going to do red because it'll recognize that. And then we go back to our save it, go back to our portfolio, and now the H1 tag is actually red in our website. Now, this might have some problems, right? Because what happens if we want a subheader that's another H1? Oops, H1 equals subheader. Well, now any subheader that we write, because it uses the H1 tag, is going to also be red. So maybe we just want that, that first header to be H1. You can use this concept in HTML called IDs or classes, where you can start to assign different stylistic variables to only specific parts of your code. So in our case, let's say we want our header to be a class, and this is our title. And you just basically the class is just going to be written within the inside of the opening tag of your code. So you can do open tag H1 space class, and class is just an attribute of this tag is title, right? And then now in the style, you can say, and because we're using a tag, we have to use a dot before. So we say dot title. If we just said title, it would say, I don't know what you're talking about. So we need a dot title. Now dot title, color it red, save that, refresh the page. And now, even though we have two H1 tags, only the one that had the class is colored red. So this is how you can start to define that some things look a certain way, some things are a certain size, other things are not. This is sort of like a very rapid introduction because we're not going to be using any of this code in the actual portfolio. But thumbs up if this sort of makes sense.
Can you go over how you got like under style to like the color red again?
Sure, yeah. So if you open up the style, make sure it's closed down here, and then inside you can either say red. If you want, you can also do like body. Type in the tag that you're trying to change the style of, and then type in two curly brackets, open and close, left and right. And then inside, the way you assign different stylistic attributes is you say, in this case, the color, this is just a basic CSS property, is red. If you wanted to, we can play around with the different color code. So let's say we want this like puke green, and this is the hex code. We can type that in, save that. And now our entire text is puke green. Wonderful. Does that make sense? Let me copy this entire code into the chat so you can all see this. How's it going? Is it too fast, too slow, or am I not being clear?
It's a little fast, but
We'll definitely send the recording along to everybody as well. I'm trying to make it so that we can build the actual portfolio before the before people have to sort of dip out. But I'm going to stay on as long as we need so we can recover things. But as needed, feel free to just like copy the code I put in the chat, and that way you can start to see what sort of things are going on. Make sure you always save it. Save the code before you try refreshing it in the browser. All right, so as you can see, you know, it's easy to start building these things, but you can imagine that it's difficult to, you know, say like, oh, I want this to be this color, this font, this layout, and that's where something like Bootstrap comes in. And what you can do is you can go to a place like getbootstrap.com, and I'll throw that in the chat as well, just so that there's no confusion. Getbootstrap.com, and this is literally where you can, you know, start using Bootstrap in your code. As you can see, Bootstrap is blah blah blah. Then, all right, you know, it's super fast, mobile first, responsive sites. You can click Get Started, and it basically tells you, oh, this is how you install Bootstrap. It's a CDN, blah blah blah. For us, it will take 2 seconds if you just scroll down to where it says starter template. It's got exactly what we have, which is, you know, an HTML tag, the, you know, head, a body tag, the H1 hello world, and it's got all these other links and random things in there. We're not going to even worry about what those links mean or what they are. We're just going to copy this entire starter template and replace all of our code, delete all of it, with the starter template. And I'm going to put it also in the chat so you can all see it. Hello, copy, paste. It's not letting me paste. Soren, could you paste the code in? Cool. And if we refresh the page, now we should see just hello world again, but you should notice that the font has changed into this sort of more soft, you know, non-serif font. Can everybody see that? Or was everyone able to sort of do that if you following now? Awesome. You now have Bootstrap embedded into your website, right? So anything that Bootstrap can do, you now have the power to do for your own things. And today, hopefully, will just be an introduction to like how powerful Bootstrap is and how easy it can be to like build really sleek, you know, clean websites using just a few lines of Bootstrap syntax. So some of the things will seem like, how did you know how to do that? Basically, in the Bootstrap docs, which is this website here, on this left-hand side, it'll basically has everything that you need to know. So, you know, the different components, if you want to add a button, if you want to add a drop-down menu, maybe a progress bar, a navigation bar, maybe you want to learn how to lay out their, you know, their grid, and they even show you here this idea of the 12 cell grid type thing. In our case, we're just going to do it by example. So, you know, we've got all this text here. All we're going to be working with is inside of this body of text. And you can actually delete some of these like gray text columns here. They don't matter. We've got the hello world here. Let's change that to, you can write in your own name. I want to say my awesome portfolio. And we are going to, the first thing we're going to do is change the class or add a class to this H1 tag. And we're going to type in something called text center. You might be wondering, like, what is that? You know, normally if you were writing your own CSS, you would, you know, type in this class name and then you would reference it in your CSS. In our case, this is a class name that already exists in Bootstrap. Basically, Bootstrap says, if I ever see the class text center, I'm going to know that that specific, you know, text or whatever text is wrapped within this tag is always going to be centered, you know, left and right of the page or something that it's inside of. So to verify that, let's go back to our site, hit refresh, and now my awesome portfolio is smack dab in the middle. This would have taken like 5 lines of CSS, maybe, whereas it took, you know, half a line in Bootstrap. So that's really cool.
So the reason why Bootstrap is like active is because of the text that starts at the top and has like the Bootstrap CSS that allows it to read the kind of code that you're putting in now.
Exactly. We're using what I sort of mentioned it in the slides with the Bootstrap CDN. And that link, we're using a CDN here for the actual Bootstrap CSS. All Bootstrap is a CSS file. They also use a little bit of JavaScript, which is also down here. So we're using a CDN for the JavaScript. But what we really care about is their CSS, which is they've written for us basically. And we can use it to customize our own sites. So as long as you have this link here up in your, inside of your head tag, that's all you need. And this is true for any framework or library, right? So if you found something online that's like, oh, we're a library that adds, Comic Sans font to your website, all you need to do is plug in the CDN link, and that's it. I am going kind of fast with this, but I definitely recommend that you look into this a little bit more, and Bootstrap definitely has more information about what this all means on their documentation. But just for the sake of trying to show you the things you can do, we'll plug ahead. So we've got my awesome portfolio, we've got it set up there. Let's also create a little bit of introductory text. So we'll create a paragraph. This is just a P tag. We'll close it off. And then we'll say, hello, this is your introduction. My projects are below. Hire me, please. I am a 4-year student. I am smart. Refresh, and we've got this new text out here in the center. So you can start to imagine, okay, let's do this thing again where we can start to move things around and text arrange them as we want. I'm gonna also maybe copy this 2 or 3 times so we have a lot more text to work with. Cool. So let's say, first of all, we don't want it to span the entirety of the page. Maybe we want it to just, be a nice, neat little paragraph underneath where it says my awesome portfolio. Maybe, we can call this like Antonio's portfolio. And what we want is, again, to change the class of the paragraph. So we can add a class here, class right after the P. So P space class equals 2 quotation marks. And this would be a great situation where we could start to use those columns, right? So if everything was split into, if you split this entire web page into 12 equal columns, and you can put this text within any combination of those columns, you can start to imagine, okay, well, maybe I want this to span only, 6 of the columns, right? So maybe halfway across the page. So in this case, all we need to do is type in column or COL -6. And now it knows, hey, all of this text, squeeze it into half of the container that it's being inside of. Right now, the container, I say container, it's basically what's wrapped around it. The wrap is the entire website. We hit refresh. Now everything has been moved over and it's wrapped around this, neat little box. If you wanted it maybe a little smaller, we can say column 5. Or if you wanted it a little wider, maybe column 8. I actually like the way column 6 looks. And now you say, okay, that's nice, but can we move it over so that it's floating nicely between our thing? Well, you can do, again, text center. But that didn't really do anything, right? All that did is it center aligned all the text, which doesn't look that great. It's actually not what we want. So we have column 6, text center didn't work. So you can say, all right, maybe Bootstrap has a way for me to easily move things around with respect to other things. And it totally does. If you go to Bootstrap and you search text alignment right there. All right, that's where you can see this, that's how I knew that this text center tag existed. You'll start looking for text wrapping, text highlighting, you can do all that stuff. But maybe what we want is, dealing with the margins and stuff. So use spacing, here we go. So it brought us to spacing, margin padding. And here you can see, you can add in to any class, these classes compound. So you can add multiple different classes to one tag. You can say, I'm going to add a margin tag. So this is the sort of like the area around a component that you've added in HTML. And specifically, you can say the margin of either the top, the bottom, the left, the right, or left and right, or top and bottom, right? And then I'm going to increase it by a factor of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or auto. And all you need to know in this case is that to adjust our text left and right, let's add a margin so that it says the left and the right sides are going to be automatically shifted so that they're centered. That's what the auto tag means. So in our case, right next to column 6 in this p tag, we're going to add a space. We're going to add another class. And we don't have to type class again. We just literally put it in the quotation marks. And we're going to type mx, so margin x dash auto. Right, mx auto. And once again, that's literally just, we're saying margin, the left and the right, and then automatically do it for us. We don't want to have to adjust it ourselves. Go back, refresh, and now all that text has been automatically centered for us. Antonio's portfolio, it's got the text. It's right there. And now you can sort of say, all right, maybe I want it to be a little bit not as big, or maybe I want it a little wider, whatever. This is where you can start to really refine your design. How are we doing for this part? Any questions?
Would you mind going back to the code for a second?
Yeah, sure. Oh, actually, here, I'll type in, I'll paste this code in the chat.
Hey, Antonio, I think it prevents copying to the chat for big strings. So maybe you can upload the file, home HTML.
Right.
What is MX Auto?
MX Auto, here, I'll explain that again, because I might have gone really fast through that. Let me upload this file. All right, here's home.html. All right, that is in the chat. Great. MX Auto is basically another Bootstrap declaration that helps us figure out the spacing. So basically, in Bootstrap, it lets you figure out spacing, text sizes, font sizes, colors, and in the spacing. And it says, Bootstrap includes a wide variety of shorthand responses, margin, padding, things like that. If you, let's see, HTML margin. This is just an example. Anytime you have any HTML tag, the actual HTML is going to be this blue stuff here. But every tag will have something called a padding, which is the space immediately around the material. The border, which you can say, give this thing a border or a dotted line border or a gray shadowy border, whatever. And then a margin, which is how far it is with respect to maybe other things, maybe the thing right above it, the thing right to the left of it. And in our case, we wanted to adjust the margin to the left and to the right. But because we can adjust that by a number of pixels, we can say margin left, make it 10 pixels, right? But because we're building a responsive website, we just because it's 8 pixels works good on the screen we're at right now, it doesn't mean it's going to work well if you do it on a phone. What's nice about Bootstrap is you can attack the margin of any class by saying M, then say that you want the margin for the left and the right by saying the x-axis. So this x right here. If you just wanted margin, right, you could do this E. If you just wanted the top margin, you can do MT. And in our case, we wanted MX, and then you say, all right, do you want it moved over by a value of 5? And these are just like arbitrary Bootstrap, like 5 is big and 0 is small. Or do you want it automatically done? And basically, auto sets it so that it finds whatever the middle point is. No matter how big the screen is, it'll always move it left and right to be centered with respect to the container, which is what it's inside of, right? In our case, this paragraph text, this paragraph text is inside of, the only thing that's containing it is the entire web page, this sort of body tag. And it's the way HTML works. You have things sort of within other things, and that's how you create submenus, that's how you create content, subpages. And in our case, this paragraph is just contained within the entire page. That's why we did MX Auto, and that resulted in it being nice, beautifully centered on our page. So that makes sense? Awesome. We'll keep on going and add a little bit of something. So I keep mentioning this idea of a container. You might be like, what does that mean? Basically, it's what is wrapping your content, but you can also create an actual container yourself. So we can create this div tag. And a div tag is very common in websites and HTML. It's basically just like a way to say, I'm dividing my website up again into a smaller subblock. That's all a div is. So you say div. It's so common that when it autocorrects, it auto completes for me to already have a class, because usually you name your divs different classes because they'll do different things. In our case, let's call this the class of this div container. And we're going to put all the text that we've written up to now inside of that container. You see everything sort of got a little bit smaller because now there's sort of the container adds a little bit of a margin on all sides of the document. If we wanted to, we can add a little line, a horizontal line, by typing just this little HR tag here. So open, less than sign, HR, close end sign, and it creates this like sort of dash line for us to divide the content. That's sort of just like just a little HTML tag. If you wanted this line to be a little smaller, you could say, HR class is equal to, column 6 or whatever. And now it's, once again, smaller, but off to the side. What we should have done, you don't have to do this. This is just me showing you, is maybe wrapped this paragraph inside of a column 6, MX Auto. And rather than, adjusting just the whole paragraph, anything inside of this column now fits that requirement. Just like that. Sorry if that was fast. So basically, I created another div, put column 6 MX Auto, which we previously had in the paragraph tag, and then I added my HR, and that we actually don't need classes anymore for these because they are just being affected. So that's another aspect of HTML and web development code, is that when you add a CSS property to a parent, right, which is like a container that's wrapping other content, usually any CSS property that you add, like a color or a spacing or a layout rule, is going to also affect the children, right? So if I said, everything inside of this div class is going to be red, then any paragraph or text that I create inside of that is also going to be red, if that makes sense. This is sort of idea of like inheritance. So we've got, the basic setup of a portfolio, which is the name, the introduction, but we want some projects, right? Maybe you want to showcase some artwork, some photography, some projects that you created yourself. So in our case, let's go through, we'll stay inside of this container. If you sort of click on the div tags, it shows you what the opening and closing div tag are by this blue underline. So if I click this one here, I can see that the closing one is here. If I click this H1, I can see that the closing tag is over here. That's sort of to help you figure out where you are in your code. I'm gonna create some space for
the purpose of the container div class?
Sorry, one more time.
What is the purpose of the container div class?
Sure. So this container div class is, it seems like it's not doing anything, but anytime you have this container class, that's actually a Bootstrap syntax, and it basically creates a little bit of a nice margin around your entire page, or basically whatever your current container is. So you can also stack these. So right now I can make another container, which maybe I'll do. So div container. Now all this does is it adds a nice, nice even margin around your text that you're going to be including within that container. If that makes sense, it'll make more sense. So basically, it'll make sense when we add more of the project. But if we didn't have this container, your project would just space all the way to the edge of your web page. And if you look at most websites, that's not what content actually does, unless you're doing it on purpose. Usually there's some space to the left and to the right of things that are all the way towards the edge. Does that make sense? So super basic website. I'll for the sake of simplicity, we don't have to use that second container, but we'll stay right there. And now we want to say, all right, I want to show some projects here. So maybe we want multiple projects on one row with an image, maybe a title, some text to describe it, and then a link to go view more, right? That is something that is actually very commonly used in websites, and Bootstrap makes it really easy to use it. And if you go to their components, or even type it in, you can say, it's called a card. If you scroll down, you can see card right here. Or you can just search card in the Bootstrap documentation. I will copy this link, put it in the chat, so you can all get to it. Cool. And if you scroll down, you can see an example of what a card is, right? It's just like, the image, with a title, some text, and a link. And lucky for us, we can just copy that, template code and put it right into our text editor. So I'm going to copy this code and go back to our text, and I'm going to I'm just paste it in and see what happens, right? So we've got div, the div card, and it's containing all of this other things called card body, card title, card text. This is just, again, Bootstrap template that we can now adjust for our own purposes. Refresh, and now we've got this card over here with a broken image link. The reason it's broken is because if you go into the image source, which is this line right here, my line 25, the source is just three dots, which is not an image. So maybe let's go to, I Googled industrial design in Google Images, and this is cute little, I don't know what this is. This is like a, I don't know, tube thing. So I'm gonna copy the image address. If you don't know how to do that, you can just view the image in a new tab and then copy the link. You can do this with any image you want. Just go to Google Images or put in your own image if you have one. And then we're gonna go back to our image source code, paste that link in the source, save it, refresh, and now we have this image embedded into our project. Thumbs up for people if you were able to get a card embedded into your website.
What is the alt, like in the same part where you replace the ... with the link, and then if you go to the right, it says alt ...
Sure. So the alt is another HTML attribute where a lot of these things can have metadata. So the most important metadata for the image is the image source, and other metadata can be the class. The alt is actually stands for alternative text. It's an accessibility thing. So for websites that for people who use e-readers, or Google has to like figure out what images are important. And so if you name your images, so this could be profile image 1. You want to usually make it descriptive. People who can't really see the screen or for whatever reason use a screen reader. That's what it parses to read off what image it is. So it's not required. You don't need to put it in. There are services that actually Google uses to rank websites for accessibility. So if your website is not easy to view on something like a screen reader, you'll actually get ranked lower and you won't be as easily findable on Google, which is good for Google to do. So we have this project in here, but you can sort of see that it's sort of off to the side, not really in like a good margin where we want it. So we're going to take all of this, which we just created, and we're going to put it inside another set of parents and controllers. And we're going to create multiples. So the first one we're going to make a new div, and the class is going to be a container. So another container within a container to sort of shorten the blocks of the margins. So empty container class right there. Then we're going to make another div. And this is going to be a row. And again, this is just Bootstrap syntax. And now that we've declared a row within a container, Bootstrap knows that anything we put now inside of this row is going to behave responsibly, not responsibly, but basically it means that if things overlap, it'll automatically move things to the next row. It's sort of if you've heard of this, called flex or flexbox type thing. And again, this is something that you could totally hand code, but you'd have to know about flexbox. You'd have to know how to do the CSS stuff. And all we did is just type row into our text editor, and it does that for us. So now we can start to put information inside of this row so that if we ever have a lot of projects, they're not going to just expand infinitely and force you to create really zoom out on your screen. It's going to automatically move things down for you. And this is something that you shouldn't take for granted, because HTML is it's really basic. I don't want to say stupid, but it's very literal. Exactly what you tell it is exactly what it'll do. And if you say, put these images left, right next to each other, left to right, it'll just do that forever. And that's usually not how websites work. You usually want things to, flow nice and easily. Within this, we're going to add another div tag, and this is going to be one of our columns. And we're going to say maybe we want 3 columns of projects. So 12 divided by 3 is going to be 4. So let's call this a column 4. So nice. So let's give it a little bit of space between the row and the column. And this entire card that we just created with this image, let's copy, delete that, and then paste it inside of this column. And nothing really should have changed except that, you know, it might have moved over just a little bit. But it's setting us up for success. And we're sure to show you where we're at. I'm going to upload the most recent version of this code into the chats. I know this is kind of going pretty fast, but I really want y'all to see sort of like where you can go, and then I'll answer any questions that you have. All right, there's the most recent code that we've got. So we've got, you know, our title, our text, this little cute little line. We've got a block of, you know, text here. We can also adjust this. So instead of card title, we can call this, you know, maybe this is our robot tube. So we'll call this robot tube. And we want this to be called, you know, check it out. Now all changed. That's literally just text, so we can always adjust that. Maybe if you can see this blue button, this is your like classic Bootstrap button. And every website in the world is like has used this button before. I kind of hate this color. I don't really like the way it looks. And luckily for you, Bootstrap figures that. So you type in button to the search bar and you go into their button documentation. Look at that. They have all these examples of different colored buttons that you can use. And obviously you can customize it if you want a specific color, but you can use a gray one. You can use like a gross yellow one, a dark. I kind of like the dark theme. Just scroll down a little more. They also have options for, you know, these outlined shapes that when you hover over them, they change colors. And like I was like, oh, that looks really cool. All you need to do to implement this is to, you know, it's called dark. You can see here button type equals button, class equals button, button outline dark. This is all you need, button dash outline dash dark. So I'm going to copy that, and over here where it says button primary, I'm going to delete button primary and just put in btn dash outline dash dark. And now if I go back to my website, it's already changed for me without having to write any CSS or colors. You've got this cool little, if you hover over it and it changes colors, looks really sick. Of course, if you click it, nothing happens right now because we haven't linked it to anything yet, but I can show you how to link stuff later. So now you're like, okay, that's one project. Well, why did we go to the trouble of, you know, creating all of these containers and rows and columns? Is because now if you want to add multiple projects or multiple blog entries or photography or whatever, all you have to do is basically just keep adding columns of content. I thought it'd be all those together, and you've got all three of these things inside of there for you. We can change up the photos. So let's go back to industrial design. Let's find that one that we like. Oh, this one's cool. This is like a bee shaver, wasp shaver. I'm gonna save the image address to my code. I'm gonna replace this JPEG with this JPEG. We're gonna call it bee shaver. Go back to our website, refresh, and now the image has changed. Let's just do one more to make sure. Oh, it was weird. Let's do one more. Maybe we want the Tesla Cybertruck, because that is the pinnacle of industrial design right now. No, it's not. I think it's kind of ugly, but it's okay. We'll save it. Go back to our website, and now we have all three of these images. You know, you can start to see what these things look like. Obviously, you can change the name, Cybertruck. All fun stuff there. This is great. This is already starting to look like you know, a very basic portfolio site, but you know, this would do the job. Unfortunately, right now, it is by no means responsive. You can start to see it's a little responsive in that when you start to zoom in, you know, the images move for you, which if you didn't use Bootstrap, it would not do this. Unfortunately, though, as soon as you start to maybe get to an iPad width or a phone width, you know, it's starting to do this really horrible non-responsive thing. Like this will make you throw up. You don't want to do this. Bootstrap allows you to plan for this sort of thing. And by using this row property, which we did before, it'll start to automatically move things up or down based on this 12 cell theory, right? So it's going to say, all right, everything, as long as things add up to 12 evenly, they're going to be on the same row. But as soon as they surpass 12, I'm going to move things down. So if you have things that are 4, 4, and 5, that adds up to 13. So that fifth one is going to move down to the next row, even though you have 4 and 4. So in our case, we've got these 3 columns that are all 4, but maybe we want to say, hey, Bootstrap, whenever the screen becomes, medium size, let's make it column 6. So there's only 2 projects, right? So like an iPad would do it only as 2 projects per each side. What you can do to do that is, instead of saying this is column 4 always, Bootstrap has a syntax where you can say for medium-sized screens, make it column 6, but for anything else, make it column 4. So in our case, let's say that for medium-sized screens and up, we're going to just do it as column 4. So the way you do that is you write col-md-4. But then for anything smaller, just make it column 6. That's the code right there. I'm going to wait. I'll cover that again. Basically, we're defining a column, but by adding this MD, and so the syntax is basically, you can do MD, you can do LG for large, you can do SM for small, you can do XL for extra large, or XS for extra small. And large is basically your computer screens, medium is like iPad screens, and small is going to be your phone screens. So medium screens and up, make it 4. Anything else that's smaller, make it 6. Go back, refresh, and now I'm actually going to copy that over to the other ones. Whoopsie. So that all of them have that code. So now if we start to hover this a little bit closer, you can see that one of the images actually moved to the next side down. That's great. It's still kind of overlapping, and this is because this screen right here is actually small. So let's actually change the MD to LG. I think it has different definitions now of what's actually a big screen or not. So big screens, make it 4. Mediums, anything less than a large screen, make them 6. So let's, oops. Try to expand this a little bit. All right, so now on an iPad size screen, it's nice and evenly spaced out. As you get bigger, it puts them on all in 3 rows, spaces them out. But again, we still have this issue of, if you have a phone, it's still overlapping. So how can we fix that? Well, we can say, all right, so for large screens, so column 4, for large screens, make it column 4. We can then say for medium screens, make it column 6. But then for anything else that's smaller than medium screen, just make it column 12. Make it cover the entire container. So I'm not going to copy all of this over to the other 3. You can start to see this is going to get a little redundant as we copy paste stuff. Normally you would design one card and then you would, that would just populate all of your projects. But we're doing this sort of for the sake of the workshop. Now, if you refresh, you should see that, if you send it out 3 projects in 1 row, that's great. Let's go to a medium screen size, it gets smaller, and then boom, shifts the Cybertruck over to the next row. Then as you keep going and going and going, it moves them all down to individual rows. So far, so good. How are people feeling? We're going to copy the code over soon, but we're going to do one more thing to the rows. This is getting better, but it still looks bad. Does anyone know why? Who thinks it looks bad? Why?
Is it because all the cards are left aligned?
Yeah, they're all left aligned, and that's horrendous. So we actually fixed this problem before, back when we messed with this div class over here for our projects. So we can just add MX Auto. And the weird thing is, I couldn't add. It doesn't work if you add MX Auto to the column class. You actually have to add MX Auto to the card class, because the card is what's inside of this column, and that's what gets moved left and right. So next to card, I'm just going to add a space and then type in MX-Auto, refresh, and now that card will successfully move left and right. So let's add that to every other card. So we extend that open a little bit. We close it to medium screen. It's still nice and evenly centered. Oh, this is amazing. And then boom, phone screen, it's all centered, and that's nice. Nice and evenly spaced. You might even say like, oh, I don't like how this project is like touching this other project. Well, back to Bootstrap, we can do the same thing. So if you go to spacing, remember you have the option not to just do the X or the Y, but you can also just do the top or the bottom. So maybe we want the bottoms of all of our cards to have a little space so that the next one isn't touching it. So let's do MB, which is margin bottom, MB5, for example. That's just like, if it was 4, it would be a little smaller. If it was 2, it would be actually less. So let's copy MB5 over to all of our cards. Refresh, and now if we go to a really small screen, there's plenty of space between all of our projects. Likewise, this looks kind of bad now because it's all scrunched. It was a column 6 that we scrunched now into a small screen, but we already know how to fix that. We can say for this, this paragraph tag, we can say, okay, for large screens and up, be a column 6, but for anything else, be column maybe 11 so that it doesn't take up the whole space. Refresh, and now that has actually don't like that. Let's do column 10. And now that looks nice and pretty on a small screen. Still looks really nice on a medium-sized screen, and then on a large screen, it goes back to being nice and small. I'm going to copy this entire thing over so you can have the source code. There you go. And I'll pause there. How are we feeling? Any questions of anything we've done up to now? We've been able to make things responsive, space things out so they look nice, add in images, add in buttons, things like that. People have questions?
If the image is on our own computer, not the internet, how do we put it?
That's a great question. Okay. Let me grab an image from the internet and download it. Share. There we go. So let's say we really like the spider robot thing. And I'm going to just say download image or download the image. Save image as. What you want to do is you actually want to save it to your folder that you're working in. So you can go to web portfolio, which is where I'm at. I'm going to call this spider image. I'm just calling it spider. Save it. And now if you go to Atom, you can actually see that it should work in any text editor that you're at. Because I saved it and put it into the same folder that I'm working with, that file actually shows up here. And this is just a file. So likewise, instead of putting in a whole link to something on the internet, you can just delete that link. And rather than typing the actual link itself, all you need to do is type in spider.jpg, just like that. And now if we refresh it on our website, it shows up there. Because it knows where that file exists. If anything ever doesn't show up, it's because your website doesn't know where is this thing. The reason those other ones show up is because I gave it a link that points to exactly where it lives on the internet. In this case, this one is living on my computer.
Why did the size change?
That's a great question too. So these cards are not perfect. And actually these images, if the images are different heights, the actual cards will also be different heights. There's a way to change that, but you'd have to adjust the actual CSS of the image. So in the image tag, you could say height is something, specific. I'm not gonna change it now because it might not work exactly how we want it to, but that's definitely something that you'd have to adjust if you wanted them all to be perfectly the same size. Good catch. Let's add another thing here to make it look like more of a complete website. Another fun component of Bootstrap, if you go to components, is how there's just so many. You can do drop downs, you can do popovers. Let's go to navbar. And I'll copy this link over for everybody to play around with. Cool. If you go to the navbar and you scroll down, it shows you a preview of what a navbar, Bootstrap navbar would look like. And you've got a link here, various links. You can drop down. You can type in stuff into the search menu. You can have a search button. And Bootstrap is nice enough to give you a template that you can copy into your own code. So let's copy that go into our text editor. Let's scroll up, well above this. I have Antonio's portfolio here. Let's even go above this container, right underneath the body tag. Let's make some space for us. And I'm gonna just paste in exactly what I copied. This whole big block of text. And this, you don't really have to worry about what this does. You can just sort of go in line by line and, view what it's doing and then what happens in the real life. So this is our, this is saying it's a nav bar, but let's change it to, portfolio. Let's, this is a link. Let's call this maybe our projects, or actually let's call this our, resume. Maybe we want to put a resume there. Maybe we want this to be projects. And you can see here, this is actually a drop down, toggling drop down menu. And that's something that Bootstrap does again for you. And then our projects, we can do like tech, maybe we can do art, and maybe we can do, a combination of tech art. And maybe for some reason, subscribe is, this is a disabled link, and then it's going to show up differently there. So let's preview what that looks like on our website. Hello world, and refresh. And now we've got this kind of weird looking gray nav bar, which is great, right? Without doing a ton of work, we basically just copy pasted it in. We've got a search menu, a search button, all this menu where we can put in all of our other projects, a link back to our homepage. It doesn't look great, so maybe does Bootstrap have a good way to color these things? In fact, they already do. If you scroll down to the bottom, we've got different color schemes, which is really lovely. In the same way that you can type in like the button colors, you can type in the nav bar colors. In this case, it's saying if you want a dark nav bar, all you need to do is type in nav bar -dark, and background is dark. So if we go up to our nav bar, ours from the template is nav bar light, BG light, which is background. Let's replace light with dark. And replace light with dark. Save that, refresh. And now we've got this slick dark nav bar in our page. Maybe again, you don't like this like green button. You want like a darker theme. So we find where that search button is, which looks to be right here. And we've already seen this before. We've got the button-outline-success. This is just the way they name their green, but maybe we want, again, dark, or maybe we want it to be like the info button, which is a sort of blue. Now it's changed to this like soft blue color. And from here, it's literally just a matter of like, filling in your introduction, your descriptions to your projects. Maybe if you want to add more and more and more projects, we've got, we can just copy these over and over again. And now you've got all these projects that you can start to like mess around with, put in different photos. Again, it's all still very, really responsive, so it's going to do that. What's really nice, if you notice, the nav bar is automatically responsive for you. So, big screen here, it's got the search menu, it's got all the things. But as soon as you go to a medium-sized screen, it creates this little hamburger toggle button that you can click. And this is already responsive for, like, this is exactly what you'd see on a phone screen. You click this, goes up, goes down, it already does the animation for you. Like, very clean, easy UI that normally if you wanted to hard code this, which is totally good, would take you like tons and tons of lines of code that we've now done with really not that many lines, just by copying and pasting the templates and making it fit whatever we want. And a lot of it, a lot of the Bootstrap stuff is like very customizable. So like, say you don't like this font and you want your own font, you can totally do that. We can go to Google Fonts and browse, various fonts that you like. Somebody shot one out that you like. Anyone?
Roboto.
Roboto condensed. It's too different. It's too close, similar to the Bootstrap font. Let's do a wacky font. Sorry, I didn't mean to completely. All right, let's do redressed, because why not? This is what the text looks like, and we can say, okay, how will we add the thing? They really changed their hello.
Is it download family, upper right hand corner?
We can download it, but normally there's a much easier way to just Oh, there we go. Okay, so I hit this little plus sign. And we just like how we use the CDN to include Bootstrap, you can import fonts just with a link. So it says to use it on the web to embed a font, copy this code into the head of your HTML. So this is the link. I'm just going to literally copy this, go into my HTML, find the head, put that in there. Then it says to use the font, you want to type in the CSS property. Font family is Roboto Sans Serif. Oh, I actually use Roboto. How do we use this? Oh, it's a special font. I do have to download it. Whatever. But we'll use Roboto in this case. And say we only want the this text here to be Roboto. So let's go and let's create a style tag. And this is our H1 header. So let's type H1, and it's going to be font family is Roboto Sans Serif. Now if we refresh, it changes this font to Roboto. I wish it was a more aggressive change. Let's go to 1. How do I add these? I guess, oh, you can just select this. I don't even know how to do this. This is weird. I don't know what's going on. Oh, there we go. You can select all these different fonts here. I accidentally selected too many. Remove Roboto, remove Righteous, remove Ranchers. I'm gonna, again, copy. You can have as many of these as you want as well. Copy this. And then font family equals routed cache. Instead of Roboto, we're going to use this one. Let's see what it looks like. Cool. And now we have Antonio's portfolio in this disgusting font. But this is how you can start to customize your thing. One more thing, if you want to maybe start to say like, all right, I actually want to like have this link to a separate file, right? And then we can start to talk about the Robot2 project. Right now, if you click it, nothing happens. Let's go look to where that is. So if you find it, it's in the first card, check it out. You can see that it's wrapped in this A tag, it's just literally A. A stands for anchor, and that's where any link on any website is usually going to be an anchor tag. And the reference or the source is this. Right now it's just a £sign because that's what you use when you don't have any link. But say we wanted this to link to project.html. What you can do is within your same folder, create a new file called project.html. And then this is going to be something else. So this is, let's just type in another H1 and say, this is my project. More coming soon. Save that. And now if we refresh this page, you can hover over this link and see that it actually links to, oops, does it actually link to it? Project.html. Oops, I selected the wrong one. Let me copy this over to the first card here. Refresh. So now if you hover over this link, it actually links to the new page that we created. And that's how you do that. I'm going to stop there. Happy to keep going. But does anyone have any questions about like this, what we've done, or web development in general? I know that was a lot of information to go throw at you really quickly. But really what I wanted is to serve as like an introduction for you to be able to see like what's possible and what avenues you would use to approach it. I mentioned a couple of things like, go through the Bootstrap docs, but you can also go through W3 schools, and they have these like very, very simple basic web tutorials that explain everything that I explained, but like much slower and much faster. So if you want to learn HTML, you can say like, all right, what is HTML? And it goes through exactly what we did, which is, this is a heading, this is a paragraph. Maybe you want to do, deal with colors. Hello. These are all the different colors you can use. You can use background colors by setting the style. Maybe you want to learn a little bit more about like, let's see, videos, which you can put in even videos into your things or whatever. Same with like CSS specifically, or JavaScript or Python, really anything else. This is like your encyclopedia for like anything, any basic web development. And they even have things on Bootstrap, things on jQuery, and of course, as you start to get more, oh, that's cool. They have different I've never seen the Bootstrap tutorials. But if you want to do more advanced things like using things like React or Vue, then you can start to look at the documentation for those frameworks. But for building your first ever website without using complicated things like Python or things like that, just doing what we did today, which is like making an HTML file and adding some text and playing around with the colors and the stylizing is going to be really helpful for starting to build a website for any purpose you want, whether it's a personal portfolio or for a startup website or anything else that you want. We'll stop there as the official end of the workshop. So we'll answer any questions that people have.
Thank you for going through this. I guess my question is for like somebody like me who's doesn't know anything about this kind of stuff, what's the benefit of building it myself versus like using Squarespace?
Yeah, absolutely. With things like Squarespace, they are very clean and very easy to use. The drawback is that you're going to give up a little bit of freedom with being able to do exactly what you want. If what you're doing is just, I want a personal website and I don't want anything fancy, I don't want any games or cool animations, I just want like the things to show up here to look modern and that's it, you can totally use Squarespace. It's also typically more expensive, although their cost has greatly gone down. But Squarespace might be, website for Squarespace might be like $120 a year or something like that, which is not that much. But again, it'll sort of vary depending on what you're doing. Whereas, my website cost me like $5 a year because all I'm doing is hosting it. I just write the code, upload the files, and it's done. Now, if you're doing all the complicated things, say you're having people subscribe to your website, maybe it'll cost you more if you have Squarespace and you have to pay for a database to hold people's information. It starts to get complicated depending on what it is that you're trying to do. It is also great to just like know what's happening in the background. Squarespace does allow you, if you're a developer, to add in your own code to a Squarespace site. And that way, if they don't do something that you want to do, maybe you want your images to do a little loop-de-loop every time you click on them. They're not going to do that for you, but if you know how to do it, you can totally do it.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, and we've also done other workshops that focus specifically on like web design. So this is very much like a, top to bottom, like this is how you make a basic website. But there's also websites where we do specifically CSS, which is like, how do you move things so that they, are aligned this way, or that they animate. That's a fun workshop. It's great for like landing pages or a startup page. Any other thoughts or questions? What's up?
I was just gonna say I gotta head out, but thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming through. And I hope people were able to follow along. If not, we'll definitely send along the recording so that you can go through. And I'll also send along the slides because I highly recommend you go through those links and just start like seeing what it is you want to do, finding someone who's done something similar to it and just copy them. There's nothing better than just taking what other people have done on the internet. And I know that's true for CSP stuff. Like I just copied things off of like Stack Overflow. It's like literally the same for web development. You just copy other things people have done and make it your own. And that's really all it is. We're all just trying to find our place on the internet.
All right.
Awesome. See ya.
This has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Yeah.